Chapter 11. The Currency of Development. Sand is the unsung hero of our world. Michael Welland, Sand Wars. A short flight away from ever-busy Europe lie the islands of the blissful, the islands of eternal spring, the islands of the gods, the Canary Islands. Even closer to Europe lie the Balearic Islands, with classic Mediterranean postcard places like Mallorca. Millions of weary Europeans flock to these destinations to let their hair down and party, to find solace or as a refuge from the bitter winter cold. In 2017, two organizations, a golf course in Mallorca and developers of a luxury beach resort in the Canary Islands, were surprised to find themselves at the center of a storm. As far as they could tell, they had done no wrong. They had been carrying out normal business practice, and yet they were facing a media frenzy as people gathered to protest against them and their suppliers. At the heart of the controversy was the sand they had just imported from Western Sahara for construction and maintenance. The protesters held up banners that read, "Protect the natural resources of Western Sahara for the Sahrawi people," and "Stop the plunder." As far as the companies were concerned, it had been a run-of-the-mill operation. Surely the consignment was legal, or the civil guard would not have allowed it into the port, right? They had work to do, a reputation to live up to, and guests to satisfy, and this media attention was for all the wrong reasons. The golf course was a thriving business. It was a short ride away from the city, and it offered wonderful panoramic views and a varying landscape that catered to clients wanting to test their technique. But they were quick to admit that they did not know the origin of the sand they had bought to replenish the bunkers. They normally sourced sand from inland quarries, but this sand worked well for draining water off the golf course, as it had very little organic content. The developers of the luxury resort had no qualms about using this sand. They had just spent over 6 million euros and had been building their resort for over 25 years. They had worked hard to get all the necessary approvals and had just received permission from the local council on condition that they complete the project within 1 year. They were proud of how they had transformed an unappealing black beach of volcanic rocks into a lush beach with blonde sand, where people could walk without falling and hurting themselves. They had created a tourist magnet people would want to return to. Their promotional video depicted the international star footballer and local hero David Silva espousing their cause. They were improving the region's economy by boosting tourism and offering much-needed employment. They had tried to get sand from other sources, but had been denied, and found no other option but to import it. They couldn't understand what the fuss was all about. After all, it was common practice to import sand, and even Playa de la Teresitas, one of the most popular beaches in Tenerife, had been built using imported sand more than 40 years ago. As far as they were concerned, such sand was routinely used in construction projects across the Canary Islands. This issue had been highlighted several times over the years by Western Sahara Resource Watch, an international network of organizations and activists researching and campaigning against companies working for Moroccan interests in occupied Western Sahara, and working to preserve the natural resources for its people. The Canary Islands have been importing sand from the occupied territory of Western Sahara for decades, ever since the local council realized that it was cheaper to import that sand than to use the local but rare and expensive black volcanic sand. The first recorded import was in 1955, when Western Sahara was a Spanish colony. Today, however, this land is occupied territory, and 165,000 of its people live in refugee camps in the middle of the sweltering desert in neighboring Algeria. They long for the right to self-determination and are bitter about having to depend on humanitarian aid when they should have been one of the richest countries in North Africa. Meanwhile, exports of phosphates, fish, and sand from their region continue unabated. With an economy that is largely dependent on tourist money, developers in the Canary Islands will stop at nothing to create picture-perfect spaces